I'm Lazarus Lynch, and this is my Pride story. I grew up in New York City, and I grew up in a household for brothers and sisters, mom and dad, pretty traditional. We grew up always feeling like we had the freedom to just be our authentic selves. We grew up in the church. And so for folks who may not know what that means, that just means that we were in church regularly. We were in church regularly. I mean, Sunday to Sunday, we were in church. Prayer service, revival, missionary service, Bible study, choir rehearsal, praise and worship rehearsal. I mean, there was just so much. There were so many ways that I was invested in my church community. And I loved my church community. In school, I went to a school that pretty much was in an all-white community, and naturally I felt, as one of the very few Black kids in the whole building, like an outsider. And so I found friends. I was grateful to have friends there who really helped me to feel included. But at the same time, I knew I was different from the other boys. I didn't dress like them. I didn't talk like them. I wasn't athletic like them. I loved running and I loved sports, but I'd rather hang out with the girls. And so from a very early age, I knew that I was sort of different. But what made it really hard was growing up in an African-American community where I didn't see any examples of what it means to be anything but heterosexual. I mean, I'm sure it was around me, but there were very clear messages that I received as a kid that being gay was not okay. I mean, everything from a school teacher who told me to not put my sweatshirt around my waist and tie it. She said that that's what do, excuse my language. I remember just having these confrontations in school, on the school bus, where kids would say, that's gay, that's gay. If you stood like this, if you made a hand gesture in a certain way, if you even looked at your nails like this, or like this instead of like this, like that was all gay. So I understood at an early age that gay was not only a sexual identity, but it was also a way that you expressed yourself. And I also knew that if you were labeled gay, that would mean that you would be ostracized from community. So I wanted to belong. I wanted to feel like I had community and I had peers. And so that wasn't something that I was willing to risk. But things got really interesting when I got into high school, because that's when I had more of an understanding of my own identity. I wasn't out yet, but there had been a lot going on in my life that was bringing this conversation up to the surface. I was in my church community, but I was struggling quietly being a gay person and being active in my church. I was having an affair with actually one of the leaders in the church. And so once all of that sort of came to an end and I was ready to tell my truth, and I was also tired of hiding and lying and being deceitful about what I was feeling, I came to my parents and I said to my mom, "Hey mom, I'm gay." Those are not easy words to say. I've come out to my mom like now 3 times, and each time it was always different. The first time was sort of like "Are you sure?" The second time was another sort of like, "Are you sure?" And the third time I remember standing in my mom's apartment putting on some eyeliner, and she had asked me, she said, "Are you sure you're gay?" And I said, "Mom," for the third time. At that point, I was really frustrated with her. But, one of the things that I realized is that generationally, my mom came from a very different generation where she had gay friends, she knew gay people, but I guess in her mind, she had an idea of who her kids would be. And they say parents always know. I think maybe she was in denial a little bit. So I think there were a lot of maybe ideas that she had about who I was or who I would be that just didn't fit the mold in terms of my own identity. And so I wasn't out in high school publicly to my peers, even though my peers would always ask, "Hey, Laz, are you gay? Y'all know who you are. You watching this video, you know who you are." Who was asking me that question? I mean, everybody knew, but I wasn't able to really stand in the truth of myself. And so I think what's really important for people to take away from my story is that you have to come to terms with your own identity as you're ready. But at the same time, I think it's so important to find people who you love and who love you back, who you can share your identity with and who you can express yourself with. I was fortunate enough to have siblings and family members who were very accepting of me And because of that, I was able to express parts of my identity. I had close friends who were not out to their parents, but they were out to me and I was out to them. So we had our own moments of beautiful, special times that felt very sacred for us. So I think that's so important. If you can find that even in small ways to find those communities, your story is your story and you get to own your story, and nobody gets to tell you when to come out, when it's time to tell the truth, when it's time, whatever. All of those things, I think, again, are structured to give heteronormative people a lens into your own reality. And I think that more queer people need to be in positions where they are the writers of their own lives, they're the narrators of their own journeys. And I was fortunate enough to have that. It was actually easier coming out to my dad, believe it or not, a Black man who I looked up to. My dad was, almost 6 foot tall, a big, stocky dude. And, to me, he was like a manly man. He was a hero. And so when I came out to my dad, I actually felt very comfortable. I felt that comfort. I felt safety. One of the things that I really loved about my father was his ability to love all kinds of people. And I think that's so important. And my mom, right? My mom was a person who had traveled the world. She understood that people were different and looked different and talked different and ate different. And so that was a really beautiful foundation, a gift really, that my mom and my dad gave to all of us as kids. And it's part of the reason that I was able to eventually live in my freedom and live in my truth. I want more kids to have that. I want more kids to be able to look at themselves every day in the mirror and say, I like what I see. I love who I am. And to have moments where they can express that, they can express their truth and be their authentic selves. Part of being a queer person, there is a lot of trauma sometimes. It's not easy. You are the outsider. The world is not necessarily designed to include you or make you feel like you belong or that you're special. And that's why I really encourage people to find community. Find community that affirms your identity. Find an affirming therapist. Find an affirming leader to mentor you. Find an affirming person in your school who you can talk to about your identity and about your struggles. Mental health is one of the most important pieces to the queer LGBTQIA community because we are more likely to experience depression, anxiety, thoughts of suicide, suicidal attempts because of our identities. And not just because of our identities, let me correct that. It is because of the societal marginalizations that really impede upon our identity. So it's not that our identities are the problem, but it's the societal messaging and the societal structures that come to attack who we are. And so everything from politics to schools to what we can or cannot read, these are all ways of policing identity and also creating a more cis hetero community, basically white dominated community. And so that's not okay. Our children are under attack, our schools are under attack, our families are under attack, and we as people who believe in the freedom of all, have to be on the front lines of creating the change and advocating for communities whose voices don't always get heard. I love being who I am. I love that I'm queer. I love that I'm gay. I love that I get to live in my truth. And I recognize that that is a privilege and that is not something that was easily earned and not something that can be easily sustained. I have to work every day to remind myself that it's okay to be myself. When I go outside, fortunately, I live in a place where, being gay is not really unusual. But at the same time, I'm very aware and conscious of neighborhoods that I might walk through with my partner or places that we'll travel together. We have conversations about, should we hold hands here? Should we, be doing PDA out here? We're very, very aware of that because we have to be for safety reasons. And so I dream of a world where lesbian, queer, gay folks, intersex, trans folks do not have to be afraid to be who they are. They don't have to fear losing a job. They don't have to fear getting in trouble or suspended or, facing any sort of financial hardship or even death to be themselves. And that is the dream that I hold, and that's something that I work toward every day. It's an abolitionist, liberatory way of being in the world. While we're not yet there, we have a destination, and we are going to take the steps that are necessary to create that world and that change.